My brother stopped eating and talking because his bully pinned him against the fence every day. So I made the bully pee in his pants in fear. My brother is 12. His name is Leo, and he's the kind of kid who still waves goodbye to me from the window when I leave the house. He builds model planes on the dining table, labels every piece with tape, and talks to our dog like she understands English. He's soft, not weak, just soft. And some kid at his school decided that was a problem. The kid's name was Colton, 14, held back a year, and built like he'd been eating other kids' lunches since kindergarten. He sat behind Leo in math class and spent every period flicking the back of his ears, calling him a baby, and telling him nobody at that school liked him. Leo stopped eating breakfast, then he stopped talking at dinner. Then I noticed he was walking home the long way, the one that added 20 minutes, just to avoid the bus. I asked him what was wrong. He said nothing. I asked again. He said nothing louder. Then one day I picked him up early for a dentist appointment, and I saw it. Colton had Leo pressed against the fence near the baseball field. Two of Colton's friends stood behind him, laughing. Colton was holding Leo's backpack over his head like a trophy, and Leo was just standing there, arms at his sides, staring at the ground. He didn't even try to get it back. I pulled out my phone in the parking lot and took the picture through the windshield because something in my gut told me I might need it. That's when I knew it wasn't new. I went to the school the next morning, sat in the front office for 40 minutes before Mrs. Loomis, the vice principal, agreed to see me. I told her what I saw. She nodded, wrote something on a sticky note, and told me she would look into it. 2 weeks later, nothing had changed. Leo still walked the long way, still didn't eat, still flinched when someone moved too fast, so I went back. This time Mrs. Loomis told me Colton came from a good family, and that sometimes boys just had rough social dynamics. I asked what that meant. She told me not every conflict was bullying. I left before I said something I'd regret. That weekend I looked up Colton's mother. Her name was Brenda Hoffman. She ran the school's parent booster club, organized every fundraiser, and based on her social media, thought her son was the second coming of a varsity athlete. I found her at the next school event, a Friday night basketball game. I introduced myself, told her my brother was Leo, told her what Colton had been doing. She laughed. Then she said, "Maybe your brother needs to toughen up. Colton's just being a boy." I told her Colton had been physically cornering my brother every day. She put her hand on my arm like I was a lost child and said, "Sweetheart, if your brother can't handle a little teasing, that's not my son's problem. Maybe try signing him up for karate or something." Then she walked back to her seat like I was a fly she'd just swatted. That was the moment I stopped being polite about it. I spent the next 2 weeks learning everything about Colton. Not hard when a 14-year-old posts his whole life online. I learned he cried every time his coach yelled at him. I learned he was scared of his older cousin, a kid named Drew, who roughed him up at every family reunion. I learned Colton only picked on kids smaller than him, never once tried it with anyone his size or bigger. Most importantly, I learned he walked through the park on Elm Street every day after practice, alone, no friends, no witnesses, just him and his bat bag. So I started showing up, not to do anything, just to be there. The first day he didn't even notice me. The second day he glanced over. By the fourth day, he was walking faster. I never said a word. I just stood at the same bench, arms crossed, looking right at him. On the fifth day, he changed his route. I found the new one, showed up there too. By the end of the second week, Colton was practically jogging past me, looking over his shoulder every few seconds. He had no idea who I was. He just knew someone was always there, and it was eating him alive. Then I made my move. Leo had a little league game that Saturday. Colton's travel team practiced on the next field over. I showed up early, waited until Colton was in warm-ups, and walked to the chain link fence between the two fields. "Hey Colton, I'm Leo's brother, the kid you pin against the fence every day." His face went white. I kept my voice low. "I know you cry when your coach yells at you. I know you won't even look at Drew at your family reunions. I know you've never once picked on someone your own size." Colton's eyes went wide, the scared kind of wide, where the white shows all the way around. "How do you know about Drew?" His voice was small, the voice of a kid who knows what it feels like to be on the other side of that. I didn't answer. I just stood there and let the silence do the work. 3 of his teammates had stopped stretching. One of them, a kid with a red batting glove in his back pocket, stepped closer and said, "Who's Drew?" "Shut up," Colton said, spinning around fast. His voice cracked right in the middle, the kind of crack where it jumps a whole octave and everybody hears it. I leaned into the fence. "That's the thing about being a bully, Colton. You think everyone's afraid of you, but I've been standing in that park for 2 weeks and you've been running from me like a rabbit. What does that make you?" He puffed up his chest and tried to recover. "You can't do anything to me. I'm a minor. You're just some guy." I smiled. "I don't need to do anything to you. I just need to be around. Every game, every practice, every walk home, and every single time, I'll be the guy who knows exactly who you really are." Colton's hands were shaking. The fence rattled where his fingers were hooked through it. A whistle blew. His coach yelled for him to come back. Colton looked at me one more time and jogged off, then dropped 2 easy grounders and threw to the wrong base while his coach pulled him aside. After the game, Leo didn't ask me what I said to Colton, but he ate dinner that night, first full plate in weeks. He even talked to Kara, our dog, while he was doing it, telling her about a play he made at second base. That told me everything. I should have known it wasn't going to be that simple. Monday morning, I drove Leo to school myself. I parked across the street, turned the engine off, and just sat there. 5 minutes went by. Then a silver SUV pulled into the drop-off lane and parked crooked, right in front of the entrance like the rules didn't apply to her. Brenda got out, slammed the door, and marched straight into the front office. She was in there for 20 minutes. When she came out, she was already on a call, voice carrying across the parking lot. "Some grown man harassing my son at practice. I want him banned from school property." That afternoon, my phone rang. Mrs. Loomis. Her voice had that careful, rehearsed sound. "We've received a complaint that you approached a student in an intimidating manner. I need you to understand that if this continues, we'll be forced to involve the authorities." Just like that. No mention of anything I'd reported. "Did you also receive my 3 reports about that same student physically assaulting my brother?" I said. "Because I have the dates, and your sticky notes aren't going to hold up as a response." The line went quiet. Not the kind of quiet where someone is thinking about what you said. The kind where someone is figuring out how to end the conversation without admitting anything. Finally, she said she'd circle back. That was her favorite move. Circle back, look into it, follow up. All phrases that meant absolutely nothing. I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. That evening, Leo came through the front door and I knew something was wrong before he put his bag down. He had that look from before, when he first stopped eating. Closed off, small. He dropped his backpack by the door, walked past me without saying anything, and went straight to his room. I knocked, opened the door. He was sitting on his bed with Kara curled up next to him, staring at his hands. I sat on the edge of the bed and asked what happened. He didn't answer at first. Then he broke. Colton told everyone at school that you're a creep who follows kids around, Leo said, his voice shaking. Now people are looking at me weird. He said you're going to get arrested. He looked up at me and his eyes were red and wet. Why did you have to say anything? You made it worse. Those words hit me harder than anything Colton or Brenda could have said, because Leo wasn't wrong. My move at the fence backfired. Colton took what I did and turned me into the bad guy, and Leo into the kid with the creepy older brother. He weaponized the whole thing. That night I called Carmela, a friend from college, the kind of person who listens without interrupting and then says the one thing you don't want to hear. I told her everything. She let out a long breath. You can't keep showing up at his games. Brenda is going to twist this into a legal thing, and you'll be the one who looks dangerous. So what? I said. I just let him win? No. You stop playing his game and make him play yours. You said this kid only bullies down, never up. So stop being the scary stranger. Be the thing he can't run from. The truth about who he actually is. Get other parents in the room. Find the families whose kids he's hurt and let them speak for themselves. Brenda can twist one guy. She can't twist a room. I sat with that for a long time after we hung up. Carmela was right. The fence worked in the moment, but the second I wasn't standing right there, Brenda flipped the story. I needed something that didn't depend on me being physically close to Colton. Something Brenda couldn't spin into a restraining order. Something that put Colton's own behavior front and center. The school's parent-teacher night was Thursday. Brenda would be there at her booster club table. Mrs. Loomis would be there too, floating around the gym, greeting families, pretending everything was under control. Both of them, in the same room, surrounded by other parents who had no idea what was happening in the hallways of that school. Over the next 3 days, I did some quiet asking around. Leo had mentioned other kids Colton messed with, not by name, but by what happened to them. A boy who came home with bruises. A girl who stopped going to the cafeteria because Colton would take food right off her tray. I paid attention at pickup, talked to a couple of parents in the lot, and figured out which families had kids with the same problem. Thursday evening, I pulled into the school parking lot at 6:15, clean button down. I made sure I looked like every other parent walking through those doors. The gym was busy, tables along the walls, teachers behind student work, parents milling around with paper cups and cookies. Brenda was at the booster club table, smiling so big you could see it from across the room. Mrs. Loomis was near the gym doors, shaking hands with families. I didn't go to either of them, not yet. I walked toward the science displays where I figured I'd find the parents I was looking for. I found the first one near the math display, a mother standing by herself, looking at her kid's poster about fractions. I introduced myself, told her my brother was Leo, and asked one question. Has your kid ever had a problem with Colton? Her whole face changed. Not surprised, tired. My son comes home with bruises, she said. The school told me it was rough play. The second was a father near the water fountain outside the gym. Big guy, quiet, same question. He looked at me for a long second. My daughter is afraid to go to lunch because Colton takes food off her tray and nobody stops him. I went to the school about it twice. They told me it was a personality conflict. 3 families, 3 kids, same bully, same school response, which was no response. Just sticky notes and soft phrases that meant we're not going to do anything about this. I told each of them what I was planning. I was going to talk to Mrs. Loomis tonight, right here, and ask her directly why the school had done nothing. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was just going to ask a question and let the answer speak for itself. I asked if they'd stand with me. The mother said yes before I finished the sentence. The father nodded once, slow, like a door closing. That was enough. I waited until Mrs. Loomis moved over to the refreshment table. I walked up and kept my voice conversational, just clear enough for the parents standing nearby to hear without straining. Mrs. Loomis, I wanted to follow up on the bullying reports I filed. My brother is still being physically cornered every day, and I found out tonight that at least 2 other families have reported the same student. Her smile didn't drop, but it changed. It tightened. She set her coffee down carefully. This isn't the appropriate venue for that discussion. You're right, I said. The appropriate venue was your office. 3 times, and nothing happened. A couple of parents near the cookie trays looked over. The mother stepped up beside me. My son has the same problem. Same kid. I reported it in September. Then the father walked up on my other side. My daughter too. Same kid. I was told it was a personality conflict. The air around the table changed. Other parents started turning their heads. Mrs. Loomis straightened up and put on her official voice. I assure you we take every report seriously. Then why is the same 14-year-old still hurting kids every single day? That's when Brenda showed up. She must have heard the shift in the room from her table. She pushed between me and Mrs. Loomis. What is this? My son is a good kid. She pointed at me without looking at me. This man has been stalking Colton at his baseball games. He's the one who should be reported. For about 2 seconds, it almost worked. I could feel people looking at me, reevaluating. Then the father spoke. He looked right at Brenda, and his voice cut through everything else in that room. Your son took food out of my daughter's hands and called her a name I won't repeat in this room. That's not a good kid. Brenda's mouth opened and closed. Nothing came out. Mrs. Loomis cleared her throat. Let's take this to my office. No, I said. We tried your office. That's where things go to disappear. We're doing this right here. Brenda pivoted. She raised her voice for the whole gym. This is the guy who's been following my 14-year-old son through the park. Every day. Alone. Standing on benches watching him. You all want to listen to someone like that? Mrs. Loomis grabbed the opening. We were actually going to address this. We've received formal reports about an adult male approaching a minor student repeatedly. The mother beside me took a half step back. Small. Barely noticeable. But I noticed. The father held his ground, but his jaw loosened just enough for doubt to creep in. I felt the whole thing crumbling. Right there, in front of a refreshment table covered in cookies and napkins, I felt my plan sliding off the table. This was exactly what Carmela had warned me about. I took a breath. I stood in a public park. I never spoke to your son. I never touched your son. I stood on a bench. I looked at every parent I could make eye contact with. You know what I didn't do? I didn't pin a 12-year-old against a fence and steal his backpack while my friends laughed. Your son did that. I watched him do it. You have no proof of that, Brenda said. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my phone. I'd been carrying it all night with the screen unlocked because I knew this moment was coming. I had two things ready. The first was the photo I took the day of the dentist appointment. Colton holding Leo's backpack over his head like a trophy. Leo against the chain link fence, arms at his sides, staring at the ground. Two kids laughing behind him, all in one image. The second was a screenshot. One of the parents I'd talked to that week had shared it with me. A group chat Colton was in with about 15 kids from the school. In the chat, Colton had typed out clear as day that he was owning that kid Leo and that he made him almost cry again. Typed like he was proud, like it was a score. I held the phone up, screen facing Brenda. You want proof? Here's your good kid bragging about making my brother cry. You want me to read it out loud for everyone? The room went dead silent. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silent where you can hear the lights buzzing overhead and someone's shoe squeak on the gym floor 3 tables away. Brenda's eyes locked onto the screen and I watched her go through about 4 emotions in 2 seconds. Shock first, then anger, then something that looked a lot like fear. Then she reached for my phone. Give me that. That's my son's private messages. I pulled it back, out of her reach. It was sent to 15 kids in a group chat. That's not private. That's a confession. Brenda's hand dropped to her side. She turned to Mrs. Loomis. You need to make him delete that. Mrs. Loomis wasn't looking at her. She was staring at my phone like someone realizing every shortcut they ever took just caught up to them at once. The father stepped forward. I'd like to see that too, actually. 2 more parents moved closer. A woman I hadn't even spoken to walked right up and looked over the father's shoulder. Then a man holding a paper plate set it down and stepped into the circle. Nobody was asking Brenda's permission. Nobody was asking Mrs. Loomis if this was the appropriate venue. Brenda was standing alone. Not physically alone. There were people all around her, but alone in the way that counts. That's when I spotted Colton. He was standing at the edge of the hallway, just past the gym doors, holding a paper plate with cookies on it. His face was red. Not red like he'd been running. Red like he'd been standing there long enough to hear every word. The mother of the boy who came home with bruises said loudly, "Is that him?" Her voice wasn't angry. It was tired. That was worse. Colton took a step back. Brenda crossed the space between the table and the hallway in about 3 seconds. She grabbed Colton's arm. "Let's go. We're leaving." But Colton didn't move. His feet stayed planted on that hallway floor like they were glued there. He was looking at me, right at me. I didn't raise my voice. "Colton, you want to tell all these parents what you do to kids who are smaller than you? Or you want me to keep reading your messages out loud?" His chin started trembling. Not his lip. His whole chin. The kind of trembling you can't fake. "I didn't do anything," he said. It came out thin and high and didn't convince a single person in that circle. The father took 2 slow steps until he was close enough that Colton had to look up at him. "My daughter says different. She says you called her a name and took food off her tray in front of the whole cafeteria. You want to tell me that didn't happen?" Colton's eyes slid to his mom. Brenda was pulling on his arm with both hands. "Don't say anything. We're leaving right now." Mrs. Loomis spoke up and her voice had changed. Flat, professional. "Brenda, I think we need to schedule a formal meeting with all the families involved and possibly the district office." Brenda turned on her so fast Colton stumbled sideways. "You told me this was handled. You told me it was rough play. You sat in your office and told me there was nothing to worry about." "I never characterized it that way," Mrs. Loomis said. "Careful now." "You told me in your office that sometimes boys have rough social dynamics," I said. "That's a direct quote." I wrote it down. Mrs. Loomis's face went through a slow crash. A couple near the water station exchanged a look. A murmur moved through the group. Behind me a woman said, "My son told me about that kid too." A man near the wall said something about the bus I couldn't fully catch. Everyone had a story. Everyone had been quiet about it until tonight, and Colton was in the middle of all of it, shrinking. This was the kid who pinned my brother against a fence every single day. The kid who typed out messages bragging about making a 12-year-old cry and sent them to 15 people like it was a highlight reel. And right now, he was standing in a school hallway holding a paper plate of cookies, and he was coming apart. His eyes were wet. Not crying yet, but right on the edge. His hands were shaking bad enough that the plate started to tilt. 2 cookies slid off the edge and hit the floor. He didn't pick them up. He didn't even look down. Then the gym doors opened. Leo. He'd been waiting in the car. I'd told him 20 minutes. I'd been in there longer. He pushed through the doors and stopped, one hand on the handle, and saw the crowd. Saw Mrs. Loomis. Saw Brenda. Saw Colton. Colton saw him at the same time. For one long moment, nobody moved. Colton's whole body went tight, shoulders pulling up toward his ears, arms pressing against his sides, like he was trying to disappear right there in the hallway. Then I saw it before I understood what I was seeing. A dark stain spreading across the front of Colton's khaki pants. Slow, unmistakable. A parent nearby turned her head away fast. A man behind her whispered something to the woman next to him. Colton looked down. He saw it, and he made a sound that wasn't a word, just a breath that cracked right in the middle, like something inside him snapped. Brenda turned, mid-sentence with Mrs. Loomis, and her whole face went from fury to horror in less than a second. She ripped off her jacket, wrapped it around Colton's waist, and grabbed him by the shoulders. "Move! Move now!" She shoved him toward the exit doors. Colton stumbled forward with his head down. He went right past Leo, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. He didn't look up. He couldn't. The doors closed behind them. Leo looked at me. His eyes were wide, but not scared. Something else. Relief. I walked over, put my hand on his shoulder and said, "Let's go home." We walked out through the main entrance. I didn't look back at Mrs. Loomis or the other parents or the cookies still sitting on the hallway floor. The drive was quiet. About 5 minutes from home, Leo spoke. He looked like me, at the fence. He looked exactly like me. "Yeah," I said. "He did." "A block from the house," Leo said. "I don't want him to feel like that forever. I just wanted it to stop." I looked at my little brother. "It stopped, Leo. It's done." That night, Leo ate tea.